Have you ever had an experience where you thought you were dying or one where you knew you were dying? Well, I've had more than a few near misses and one very profound NDE, near death experience, that literally changed my whole life path. I'm going to share my NDE with you today and explain why we have them, why we get so close to death in order to make a life change. Welcome to your multidimensional journey. I'm Tracy Canberra, and this is a different episode for me. But I woke up this morning and my soul was like, share that. So I'm going to. Let's start with a quick story about a few near misses I've had. I was an international stewardess, a flight attendant in my 20s. At that time, I was agnostic. I don't know if I'd say I was atheist, but I was definitely agnostic. I had no proof and nothing to believe in, so I didn't. So, flying, there was one time that we almost ran into the mountains trying to find the runway in a storm down in the Caribbean. And another time that we slid off the runway in a blizzard when we landed at JFK. That was fun. I'm originally from Illinois, so I've slid into snow a lot, but never in a 747 with over 400 people aboard. Another time, we were flying to Italy, and the turbulence was so bad, I literally had the thought, this is it. And something within said, no, it's not. So, yeah, there were some near misses. I had a near miss car accident before I opened up intuitively. And my intuitive opening wasn't caused by an NDE. It was actually a spontaneous opening in a Reiki class. And it's kind of a funny story, but I'll share that another time. Or if you want to hear the story, let me know in the YouTube comments below. And if enough of you want it, I'll share it. I did definitely have an almost I'm leaving the planet episode in my SUV before I opened intuitively. Picture a triangle. I was starting to go through the hypotenuse, and a truck at the top was crossing over to go the other direction. It was a semi crossing over the lane, and I was doing 60 miles an hour. And I thought to myself, I'm not going to stop in time. There's no way I'm going to fit under the semi. There's no way I can go to the right and avoid the semi, go into the Tules, as we call it in the Midwest. There were no options. And I swear to you, this intuitive voice, remember, this is before I opened intuitively. This intuitive voice was speaking in my head, and I know it was speaking in the truck driver's head because he started to come back in the lane, and the voice in my head said, no, you can't come back. You have to keep with your turn. And he all of a sudden recommitted to his turn, which means I would have broadsided him. And again, I had an SUV. I wasn't going to fit under him. And we did this dance, and intuitively we spoke to each other. And believe me, it wasn't my voice. I just thought I was going to die. And so we spoke to each other. He ended up committing to his turn again. I ended up going into the oncoming lane to avoid clipping the end of him. So we were both safe. Unfortunately, there was a little car behind him not knowing what was going on. And when he cleared the oncoming lane, I was in it and I couldn't go back to my lane or I would have hit him. So this tiny little red Ford Fiesta had to ditch it in the Tules to avoid me. And I felt so bad for that. But it was this 2-second dance that was coordinated by a higher spirit. Funny enough, nobody pulled over. I looked in my rearview mirror, the truck kept going, the little red car got back on the road and kept going. I had continued to drive, so I pulled over, called my mother, and I was like, oh my God, I almost just died. It was just so wild for me to have this voice in my head. Of course, now I have a lot of voices in my head. Okay, my NDE. I had already been intuitively open for about 8 years. I was already living in Sedona, and in hindsight, I see that one of my higher selves kept coming in to merge with me, but I didn't recognize the energy. I didn't recognize the process. And, as happens with most people, scared the shit out of me. And so I was not having it. So I kept shutting it down every time the weirdness, I called it, would start. Well, one morning I did hot yoga and I got to my friend's house. I laid on the couch and I was like, I am not feeling well. So I ended up going home and I was laying on the couch in my place. And best as I can describe it, it was like wooden blinds, louvered doors, or shutters. It was like the shutters flipped from like up to down, boom, 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 from my head all the way to my feet. That's really what it felt like. The shutters going smack, 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 all the way down. And then I started to leave my body, not under my control. And I will preface this with, you can't touch this. I do not let any low dimensional beings come near me. In the early years, I had to learn that, but it had been years since anything came near me or could influence me. It wasn't the devil, it wasn't demons, it wasn't draconians. I've had those experiences. I know what I'm dealing with, and this was nothing I had ever dealt with before. It got worse, and I was leaving my body, and all I could think of was, someone's got to tell my kids I love them. So I called my friend and I said, listen, I'm dying. I'm leaving the planet. I don't know what's going on, but I'm being pulled out and I know it. Here's my social security number. Here's my ex-husband's phone number. Please tell my children I love them and I will always love them and I will watch them from heaven. But I'm leaving. And I hung up. I was laying there just feeling everything go. Well, 4 minutes later, Sedona's pretty small. She comes pounding at my door and I managed to get off the couch and I'm like, what are you doing here? And she's like, saving your life because you're not leaving. She's like, let's go. And this is hilarious. All I could think about is I don't have underwear on under my sweatpants, and my mom's going to be mortified when the hospital tells her I died with no underwear on. That's actually the thought that ran through my head. She took me not to a doctor, not to the hospital, but to a myopractor, which is similar to a chiropractor. This guy does a ton of energy work. So she's driving me to the myopractor, and she works with Jesus and the angels. So the whole time in the car, and it was maybe a 6 or 7 minute ride, she's holding my hand. She's calling in Jesus and the angels to protect me and to do away with any harmful energies. She's just doing an exorcism. And we get to the myopractor's office. And as I walk up to him, I notice all of these beings standing around us. And I'm like, oh, you're on the Syrian High Council. And I'm on the Arcturian High Council. And we work together in a 10th dimensional reality. And they're all here. And he's like, okay, cool. And then we go inside and I get on the table, and this is where I am so separated from my body, hovering above myself. Now, if any of you have astral traveled, you know the feeling of floating up out of your body and looking down at it. That's astral traveling. I have done it before, but I don't prefer astral traveling. I prefer bilocating, where I send my consciousness and my body's fine and there is no floating thing. So it was like astral traveling. I rised up out of my body and I was watching them work on me. And he was like, okay, we've got her back up to her knees. It was like they were trying to get me back in my body little by little. All of a sudden, instead of watching what they were doing and watching my body, I turned around and I was at the feet of God. And I remember saying, wow, I'm sitting at your feet, except you're just a big ball of white light and you don't have feet, but I know I'm sitting at your feet. And of course, Source started laughing, God, Spirit, Source, whatever you want to call it. They started laughing and they said, yes, you're here with us. And we have questions for you. Do you really want to leave? Do you really believe that your soul mission is complete? And I thought about it, and thank goodness my kids don't listen to this, and they're adults now anyway. But I thought about it and I was like, you know what? My kids are safe. They're going to be fine. They've got a dad and grandma. They'll be okay without me. But this is emotional. And I'm like, but humanity won't. I have a mission. I was put here to help people awaken. I was put here to help people reach 5D and beyond. And I haven't done that yet. I haven't fully committed. So no, I don't want to go. I still have more to do. God talked to me a little bit more, and I really recommitted several times to my soul mission of helping people ascend from this reality. And then God was like, okay, you've committed. Let's see what you got. Let's see what you do. And they sent me back. All I had seen is that ball of white light. I didn't have a life review. I didn't go through any pearly gates. I just sat at the feet of God, who was a big white ball of light. I felt myself being pushed back in my body. And then I felt the doctor say, okay, she's coming back. We've got her up to her heart. So I ended up back in my body. And that was that. I recommitted to my mission. I really doubled down on my spiritual business and my intuitive life coaching. That was the end of that experience until a year later. I had continued to have this, like, trying to take me out of my body experience several times. I had another experience about a year later of this merging. And again, I didn't know what it was. That's why I did a podcast on merging with your higher self. So go listen to that because the process really scared the bejesus out of me. And it had happened again. And I'm like, screw this. That's fine. You want me, come and get me because I don't know what this is and I'm tired of fighting it off every 3 months. And what happened was, instead of me having another near-death experience and leaving my body, this beautiful lavender mist merged with me. And I ended up bilocating to my Lesvartian collective. So I'm hovering with the collective above the planet because as a collective consciousness, they're not embodied. They've never embodied. And I believe I talked about this in the bilocating video. But once I allowed it, it was a beautiful merging. They stayed for about 2 weeks. I wanted a break. I went up to a Palladian starship and they came in and ran my body along with the ego mind. The ego mind doesn't leave. So you still eat, you still sleep. You know, I could fairly drive a car, not really well, not with them at the helm. That 2-week period was quite the trip because higher dimensional beings don't participate in duality. They just follow the premise, do what makes you happy. They don't understand the human ability to choose suffering and pain and stand in fear. So it was quite an experience, and it took a little bit to clean up some of the choices they made while they were running the show. That was my merging with the higher self back to my NDE. That near-death experience I had with God was a recommitment to my soul mission. The others were just my intuition opening up, were, I don't know, God saying hello, letting me know that spirit source really exists. And then the merging ended up being a beautiful thing when I surrendered. The lesson, or I prefer opportunity, in all of these experiences, especially the NDE, is to surrender, open, and accept. We fight so much. We have our attachments. We cling on to things. We fight what is because we want it to be different. When you practice acceptance and surrender, you allow so much more of the divine in. You allow yourself to be recalibrated so you can shift to a higher trajectory, move forward on your soul mission, but on your ascension path too. All that is telling me right now, dearest one, the importance of this story is humanity is going through a very potent time in ascension. Now is the time not to fight your natural disasters, not to fight your leaders, not to fight other humans, other countries, but to rise above it, accept what is, and return to the frequency of all that is. Return to the void, return to the 0 point. All of your labels for returning to universal energy that will guide you to a higher dimension. If you accept, if you surrender, not only will you be lightening your life and the lives of those around you, but you will then have the vision and the opportunity to make the changes needed for your ascension. Trust, dear ones. Trust in yourselves, trust in Jesus, trust in God, Trust in the universe. Trust in whatever your label is for the power of creation. Because source energy is all around you, is within you, and we are always guiding you and supporting you. Trust, accept, have faith, and surrender. You will see many beautiful changes happening this year once you surrender, and you will find yourself in the higher dimensions you only dreamed of. Well, there you have it. If you've had moments of deep surrender, share it with the community in the YouTube comments. And if you've had experiences like this and you've never fully understand the meaning, book a session with me. We'll connect in with your soul and other divine beings and discover what your true soul mission is, where you're headed on this path or on the higher paths your soul is offering you. Thank you for listening today, and thank you for joining me on this ascension path.